Welcome to Marine Tech Talk, a podcast about how Teledyne Marine's innovative technologies are enabling scientific discoveries and commercial tasks in the world's oceans and waterways. This episode is the third in a special four-part series on Silbo, Teledyne Webb Research's autonomous underwater glider that recently made the first ever circumnavigation of the Atlantic Ocean by an unmanned underwater vehicle. On this episode of Marine Tech Talk, we're joined by Joe Gradone, former customer support applications engineer for the Slocum Glider at Teledyne Webb Research. Joe discusses Silbo's journey from St. Thomas back to Cape Cod. This was the final leg of the journey and covered just under a year, 348 days, and 6,236 kilometers. Now here's our guest, Joe Gradone, with the host of Marine Tech Talk, Melissa Rossi.
Welcome to Marine Tech Talk, and I'm happy to welcome all of our listeners back to the show. Today we will be speaking with a former colleague of mine, Joe Gradone, about a historic event that occurred earlier this year when a Teledyne Webb Research autonomous glider, affectionately known as Silbo, completed a circumnavigation of the Atlantic Ocean. So hi, Joe. Welcome to the show, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, Melissa. Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone, and excited to be here.
Joe was, for our listeners, previously when he worked at Teledyne, he was a customer support applications engineer at Webb Research working with the gliders. And now Joe is a PhD student at Rutgers. So how's that going? Have you started classes already?
Yeah, it's going really well so far, even in the COVID times with everything being remote. But so far, so good. It's been a nice transition back to grad school.
Oh, great. Joe, the purpose of our conversation today is the Silbo journey. And we've kind of broken it into 4 different podcasts, and you are actually talking today about leg 4, which is the St. Thomas to Cape Cod, so that final leg of the trip, during which that vehicle traveled about 348 days at sea and a total distance of just over 6,200 kilometers. For those of our listeners who need help with the conversions like I do, that's just over 3,900 miles in slightly over 11 months. So, Joe, how far in advance of the glider recovery in St. Thomas did you actually fly out? When did you go out for that?
So we flew out. We were down in St. Thomas for a week. So Ben and I, we got unlucky. We drew the short straws and had to take this terrible trip down to St. Thomas where no one wanted to go for a week. So no, it was actually really awesome. We had to factor in some time before and after with weather windows and whatnot. But we were down there for 3 or 4 days beforehand.
Okay. Were you aware of exactly when the glider would be in range for recovery? Did you know when it was coming in?
Yes and no. So we had, we've been deploying it. We had been piloting it for a little bit over a year before recovering it, and we knew where we were going to go recover it and roughly what time it would get to that location. So we had planned this trip and sent supplies down there. And I think we had the glider staged kind of 10 miles south of St. Thomas for a few days or so. And the timing just worked out really well where we were able to tune our piloting to our travel schedule pretty well.
So what about that day? Did you have any issues with the glider while it was out for that previous leg? And were you anticipating any issues with your recovery?
As far as glidering goes, the only really hiccup that we ran into was there was some fresh water. So we had a colleague of ours, Ben and I were down in St. Thomas, and we had a colleague of ours, Lauren Cooney, who was remotely piloting Silbo, and she noticed that Silbo was having a hard time surfacing. So there was some fresh water at the surface there that made this really light density layer that Silbo couldn't particularly punch through. So she had to turn on the thruster and help Silbo get to the surface. But as far as, any particular issues, that was really the only hiccup going into recovery for that leg.
And that's a real advantage for the Slocum Glider, right? Is that the ability to be able to actually turn on a propeller, basically, to overcome obstacles like that?
Yeah, definitely. Especially with a deployment like this. Silbo, for that previous leg, had been deployed for, I think, like 400 and something days. And when you go to ballast a glider for that duration of a deployment, you're encountering so many different densities of water, and it's really difficult to nail down that ballasting. So having that thruster to help you when needed was really helpful for us.
What were the conditions on the day that you went out? Did you pick a nice day?
It wasn't. That's kind of why we factored in the weather window. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the worst. I actually remember when the boat pulled up to the dock to pick us up, we took this super small, maybe 20-something foot fishing boat, maybe 10 miles south of St. Thomas to the shelf break. And when the boat pulled up, I remember looking at Ben and saying, are we really going out on this little thing? And our boat driver he was a true local. He was part French and part native Caribbean islander. And he really, really knew this boat like the back of his hand. The way he was able to control such a small boat in a pretty sizable sea state was really impressive. So as far as boating conditions, it could have been better, but it was totally fine.
How long did it take you to get out? I mean, how far out was the glider from where you took off on the boat?
So it was 10 miles south of the island, but with the sea state and being on a relatively small boat, I think it took us maybe, I don't know, probably an hour to get out there.
Yeah. What did Silbo look like when you found her? Or I assume it's a her. I don't know. Maybe it's a he.
No, it's definitely a her. I don't know how we've assigned a gender to Silbo, but she is a her to me too. She was very dirty. We had some really great photos of all these, I think they're gooseneck barnacles hanging from the underneath side. On her, the wings, the bottom side of the glider, it was really, really dirty. I think there was a period on the previous leg where she spent maybe a few days or a number of hours sitting at the surface because of an issue, and definitely accumulated some biogrowth from that. So she was very dirty.
Can you tell that when it's flying? Are you able to see when it's flying that it's being dragged by stuff on the glider?
Definitely. That was part of the surfacing issue we were running into, was when it accumulated this growth. It's added weight to the glider, and when you use your buoyancy to fly, when you have this added mass, it makes it more difficult to fly for sure. So it essentially looks heavy. Was
there a particular purpose to the St. Thomas stop, other than it was about the right distance for it to go before it needed to be either rebatteried or whatever? Was there any other purpose to stopping in St. Thomas?
As far as I know, I think St. Thomas was mainly a really good stopping point, but we also strategically chose St. Thomas because of collaborating with the University of the Virgin Islands down there. So we knew we would have the support for the recovery and then subsequent deployment.
Okay. So what were your goals while you had the glider on land? What was your plan for your onshore time?
So we actually recovered Silbo late one morning, and we rebatteried, reballasted the glider that same afternoon, did a super quick test dive in the boat basin at the university, and then redeployed the glider the following morning, but this time on one of the University of the Virgin Islands boats. So I think over the course of roughly 2 years, Silbo was only out of the water for something like 26 hours, which is pretty remarkable. We did like a turn and got it back in the water really, really fast with really, just cleaning, rebattering, and moving some weights around and taking the data off of the cards in the glider.
Wow, that is a quick turn. It's too bad for you. It was great for Silbo, but too bad for you. You could have extended your trip into St. Thomas if you just waited a little longer.
Yeah, luckily our return flights were still scheduled when they were, so we continued which was good because we needed, normally if anything were to go wrong with glider deployment, it happens within the first 24 or 48 hours. So staying on the island to remotely pilot for an extra few days was a good kind of safety blanket to have.
So 26 hours roughly onshore, then you guys redeployed it for its next leg, or its final leg actually, to go home. So that was the final destination, was Cape Cod. Anything unusual as it took off, or you said you were piloting from St. Thomas for those first few days while it was on its next leg. Anything unusual, or did everything go pretty well?
Yeah, everything went pretty well in the days that we were in St. Thomas. The hotel we were staying at was maybe 500 or 600 feet up the mountain in St. Thomas. So I was hoping we could try and connect to Silbo over its freewave antenna. And this is radio comms, and it only works over line of sight. So I had brought a powerful Yagi antenna down there, and we're pretty high up. So I was hoping it would work, but spoiler alert, it's out, didn't work. So we had to pilot the quote unquote normal way over Iridium, and everything was pretty uneventful, which is good.
That's good news, right? Was there anything in particular that Silbo was planning on doing on her on her ride home to Cape Cod?
From St. Thomas to Cape Cod, it was actually kind of like an open book. We didn't really have any particular plan aside from just, finishing the last part of the Ocean Basin trip for Silbo.
You were, were you also involved in the recovery once it got to Cape Cod?
Yes, I was. Me, Ben, also Clayton Jones, and Carl Betcher recovered Silbo something like 30 miles south of Martha's Vineyard.
How'd you get out there? What did you take one of our boats, one of the Teledyne's boats, or did you take a vessel of opportunity out there?
It was actually a pretty busy time of year for the Teledyne boats, so we actually went out on one of Clayton's boats, or Clayton's boat.
And again, how did Silbo look when you recovered her from the waters after, I don't know, it was another 300 and some odd days at sea, I think? Yeah,
this time it was definitely very dirty. I don't think it was as dirty as the previous leg, but she needed some good scrubbing for sure.
And now that Silbo is home, are you aware of any other journeys for Silbo, or is Silbo getting retired at this point?
I don't know for sure. I would imagine that her days in the real ocean are limited, if not over. Considering she's an early G1 glider, so out of hundreds of gliders that have been made now, she's I think unit 212. So I think her seagoing days might be over now, but I'm not sure on that one.
Okay, so for the whole experience of Silbo and her four legs, anything in particular you can think of that was your sort of key takeaway from the whole journey, or something that you thought was really amazing about working with Silbo on this pretty long and historic journey around the Atlantic Ocean?
Yeah, I guess the one thing that sticks out to me, probably with every single leg, but definitely about this last leg in particular, is how this mission just kind of highlights how cool and how small and how collaborative the glider community is, from the University of the Virgin Islands helping with deployment and recovery to part of Silbo's deployment of this most recent leg from St. Thomas to Cape Cod. She was contributing data to the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Sciences BATS time series, and And when she left there, she was contributing data to the operational hurricane forecast. So Silbo is, one, a pretty remarkable glider, but two, it's just the glider community and the glider world. It's very small and collaborative, and not to mention all the things I just listed. It's pretty remarkable. It's really cool.
Cool. Yeah, it would have been fun to take part in that. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time letting us know how that entire journey ended. And I hope we get a chance to see you again or talk to you again soon. Good luck with your studies.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. It's my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Marine Tech Talk podcast. For more information on Slocum Gliders, visit our website at www.teledynemarine.com/slocum-glider. There is a press release on the website that also details the journey, as well as a recorded webinar on the journey that can be found on our Link webinar channel. For more information on how Slocum Gliders are helping researchers and commercial customers explore and understand the ocean, you can Google Slocum Gliders or search Twitter for posts from our many customers. If you like this podcast, please make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're hearing this show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time.